G'day and welcome to AOS Coach. In this video, I'm going to look at Battlescroll The Hunt, which is a match play supplement that Games Workshop released in March 2022 on the Warhammer Community site. Now, this is a supplement that introduces two new terms to Age of Sigmar that has a tied-in bonus victory point system that you'll want to get your head across. Now, I want you to think about Battlescribe like a video game patch. And these are going to be rules that they patch in to update the rules of the game, the units in the game, as well as army composition. So instead of waiting for a full year for the next General's Handbook, or even a few years in between your faction's battle tome, the game is constantly evolving based on community feedback and testing. The goal of this supplement is really attempting to address some of the more powerful units in the game, as well as trying to help lift up those underperforming factions. Remember the word that I said, attempts. We'll see how this unfolds. Now, the patch is focused on competitive match play. So if you are in this community and you are playing at store events, tournaments, practicing for an upcoming event, this is something that you'll definitely want to get your head across. So what are the changes in the hunt? The first part of the hunt is the priority targets category, and this is going to be the more impactful of the two. And the reason it's going to be the most impactful is because there is a set of units here that have basically been identified as priority targets. And when those units are destroyed, there is a points value or a reward value that is identified with that unit. Now, at the time of recording, there are 17 units that have been identified as priority targets. Units like Be'lakor, all three Mega Gargants, the Gatebreaker, the Kraken Eater, and the War Stomper. Morathi, the Bastiladon with the solar engine, not the other option. Fulminators, so not Concussors, just the Fulminators. Stormdrake Guard. These are just a few that sit on the list currently. Now, I suspect this list might change in the future. Either Games Workshop will add or remove depending on releases of battle tomes or potentially the shift in the meta, or you might find tournament organizers will tweak this. They may increase the points value to some particular units, or they may even add or remove units off this list. You know, when you look at this list, you might notice a couple of units that you might think should be on here. Maybe Gotrek should be on here, so maybe your upcoming tournament will add it to this list, but either way, not there. But the way it basically works, so let's look at the units here on the screen. Each time an enemy priority target, Fulminators, Stormdrake Guard, Long Strikes, whatever it might be, when those enemy units are destroyed, if they were not destroyed by a friendly priority target unit, you will immediately score a number of victory points equal to that unit's value. I'll break that down in a second, but basically, if any of these 17 models die and it's not killed by a unit that is also on this list, you're going to score some victory points. Now, if that unit was reinforced, so you've got those Fulminators gone from 2 to 4, you'll score an extra victory point for each time it was reinforced. So I want you to essentially think about this like it's a bounty reward for some of the bad guys in the Mortal Realms. So let me unpack this a little bit further for you. So for example, imagine a unit of 2 of these Dracothian Guard Fulminators are in combat with a unit of 3 Man-Crusher Gargants. Now, the Fulminators were listed on the table as a priority target, but the Man-Crushers were not. Remember, we had the 3 Mega Gargants, but not the Man-Crushers. Now, the unit of Fulminators are reinforced at units of 2, right? So they go 2, 4, 6. So at the moment, no reinforcement here. If that unit of Man-Crushers destroyed the Fulminators, you would gain an extra 1 bonus victory point because the Man-Crushers, which were not a priority unit, killed a priority unit being the Fulminators. Now, if the unit of Fulminators destroyed the Man-Crushers, there would be no bonus victory points because, as I mentioned, the Man-Crushers are not listed as a priority target. Now, if that Stormcast player had reinforced the Dracothian Guard, I mentioned earlier, they go up in units of 2, so 2 to 4, and the Man-Crushers did destroy those Fulminators, they would be rewarded with 2 victory points, given that they are priority targets. But let's say that the Sons of Behemoth player really wanted to destroy those Fulminators, and they didn't want to risk the Man-Crushers going in, but they had this big bad Gatebreaker Mega Gargant that was going to go in and try to destroy these Fulminators. Now, both of the Fulminators and Gatebreakers were listed on the previous document as the priority targets. So neither of them would score you a bonus victory points through the priority target system. However, I want you to remember that these aren't the only victory points you can score, because the Gatebreaker Mega Gargant is a monster. And while we are playing in the General's Handbook 2021, now I don't know what 2022 is going to look like, but in 2021, if you destroy a monster, you will score 1 bonus victory points through the Predators and Prey ability. So check out the General's Handbook if you're not familiar with this just yet. But either way, you wouldn't get victory points for either of these units being destroyed as priority targets. The second part to this document is the Prime Hunters, and that is a defined set of factions as well as sub-factions rather than individual models. Initially, the Prime Hunters are listed as Sylvaneth, Hedonites of Slaanesh, Skaven, Gloomspite Gits, the Bone Splitters within the Auric War Clans, not Kruleboyz, not Big Waaagh, not Ironjaws, just the Bone Splitters, as well as Nighthorn and Ossiarch Bone Reapers. Now, the reason that these factions are listed as opposed to, let's say, the Kruleboyz within the Auric War Clans is because these are the least powerful factions in the competitive meta, and on average, they have the worst win rates at tournaments. So there are outliers out there. Obviously, don't give me that actually, someone went 5-0 with Bone Splitters or something. But, on average, these are the worst performing factions in the game. So the Prime Hunters is really trying to lift them up a little further with some bonus victory points. So like the priority targets, this will probably change over time, and the document does list that. Now, the way that the Prime Hunters works is if you are commanding one of these Prime Hunter armies, so allegiance or sub-allegiance that we've got identified here, and if you score a victory point based off the priority targets unit, you would score an extra victory point being a Prime Hunter. Okay, so basically, if you play Gloomspite Gits, you play Skaven, you play Sylvaneth, you play Bone Splitters, you play OBR, if you destroy one of those priority targets, those 17 we initially talked about, you would gain an additional 1 on top of the other ones. So again, let's go back to an example. We have a unit of 4 Dracothian Guard Fulminators. We know that they are currently worth 2 points. 1 for being a prime target, and then 1 for being reinforced. We know that. This time, they're going to be up against the mighty Gloomspite Gits and their unit, the Fanatics, the Loon Smasher Fanatics. They are, as a faction, listed as Prime Hunters, and the Fanatics are not listed as a priority target either. So basically, the Gloomspite Gits are in the home stretch, no restrictions against them. Now, if those reinforced Fulminators, so those unit of 4, were destroyed by the Gloomspite Gits and their Fanatics, or in fact any of the models, they would score an extra 3 victory points. 2 from being a priority target, being that they were reinforced, and an additional 1 for being a Prime Hunter. Now, if those Fulminators were double reinforced, it was a unit of 6, then obviously that would be 3 victory points for priority targets, plus 1 for Prime Hunters. A unit of 2 Fulminators, that would be 1 victory point, plus 1 from being a Prime Hunter. So obviously tweak the maths as it is. Now, this, as a Prime Hunter ability, doesn't require the Fanatics to destroy the unit. It could be Troggoths, it could be Squigs, it could be Kragnos, because all of those are sitting within the Gloomspite Gits allegiance. If you're wondering why Games Workshop has made this change seemingly out of nowhere, and it could have been incorporated somewhere else, really, again, I want you to think about this as a patch to the game. They've identified a problem, we as a community have identified as a problem, and instead of waiting till the next battle tome or waiting for the next General's Handbook, they've gone in and made a patch, and they're hoping to obviously test it to see if it works and correct it either way. Because when you look at the way that they try to tweak it, you get constant updates to things like war scrolls and points and allegiance abilities when we get new battle tomes. But that's quite a slow process. If you haven't noticed, it takes a long time for things like Maggotkin of Nurgle or Fireslayers, some of them who went through whole editions without an updated book. You get these monthly White Dwarf publications, which are really just supplements, and they do give you nice little boosts, but they're really just a temporary patch, and they don't make big, wholesome changes. The other way that they do these updates is through the General's Handbook and the Winter FAQ, which really happens around that December-January mark. And you will see points adjustments, but and sometimes you see rule changes. Things like Unleash Hell and Heroic Recovery did see a significant change in the Winter FAQ. But if you reflect on the points adjustments, they were pretty minor at best, a lot of 10 and 20 point movements. But really, outside of these, what I think about this particular battle scroll is essentially it is trying to create an incentive and a restriction on list construction. And they try to tweak these and modify these and give you things like bonus victory points and battle tactic type stuff to really just reward you to either take a weaker faction, to try to punish particular units who are too effective or too efficient for their points. But I want you to remember that these aren't the only ways to score victory points, because you're going to score them through battle tactics, objectives, grand strategy. I previously mentioned General's Handbook 2021 has the Predators and Prey mechanic. And while the Gatebreaker is set at 2 victory points if you kill it as a priority target, don't forget you'll also score 1 extra victory point for slaying the monster with Predators and Prey. You will score some extra battle tactics if you use like Bring It Down or Slay the Warlord. And if you happen to be a prime hunter, you'll obviously score more. So when you start doing the maths, they do start to rack up. So the $1 million question, if you've waited this long, is what do I personally think about this particular update? So first off, I just want to lay it out there that I do not like bookkeeping. The less supplements and attachments that we have in this game, the better. I don't want to be hiring a Sherpa for my next tournament to be carrying around all my books and my accessories. It's hard enough to carry around erratas, keep across all of the changes, try to remember your army, try to remember your battle plans, try to remember your opponent and all the interactions. I get it. Unless you're going to a lot of tournaments and you are someone who is, practicing quite a lot, it can be overwhelming with another set of rules being introduced. If I'm an event organizer, which by the way I am, and I do have a large event coming up next month, I would want to be including these rules into my players pack, because the first concern that I have as a player and as a community guy is that the more casual and newer players may not be across where to find this in the Warhammer Community site, and they may not know that these rules exist. And the last thing that I personally would want is a feel bad moment where at the end of the game or at the end of the tournament, they realize that they should have won a game because of the bonus victory points for killing a priority target, and their army might have even been a prime hunter. So it could have been quite a large difference between those opponents. So for me, that's probably one thing we need to make sure that everyone is across it. Bookkeeping aside, I really like that Games Workshop is at least attempting to solve the imbalances without just increasing points. There are some units in this game, like the Pink Horrors of Tzeentch, that have continued to be a problem in the game for the last 5 years. And it doesn't seem to, no matter how many modifications or point increases that they've put into the game, the Pink Horrors are still a turd sandwich. And I never want it to get to a point where they have nerfed the unit into the ground with aggressive point changes, because there are always players behind these armies, and to not see Pink Horrors on the table would be a royal shame. But they do need to be addressed. Otherwise, units, I'm not just picking on Pink Horrors, but I'm just using them as an example here. They will continue to run riot and create terrible gaming moments. We're seeing it right now with, we had them in Lumineth Sentinels, we had, Marathi in the Bow Snakes, and we now have them with the Stormdrake Guard and the Fulminators. And the cycle will continue. Anything we can do to pull them back a little bit is great news. Now, the positives here that I want to explore is the fact that they are attempting to address them in a different way. And I think that is at least worth exploring. I like that they've tried something, and I like that they haven't gone too heavy-handed, because if they really wanted to stamp out long strikes, they could have put, the reward target to 3. And then if you double reinforced it, that would be 6 victory points. Now, would that be too much and too tough? Maybe, I don't know. But at least we can test it out at 1, see how it goes, and we can tweak along the way. And, the General's Handbook 2022 isn't far away. Some of the incentive structures like monsters might be dropped. So who knows what we're preparing for when it comes to the meta. I guess against some of the stronger armies in the game, I think this is not going to have much of an impact, because unless you're playing at the top tables at a tournament, look, you might get a couple of bonus victory points here and there for killing like the Vanguard Raptors with their long strikes. But you got to remember that the tournament player and the person who's building around their long strikes has already dealt you significant damage, because they've had a minimum 2 rounds of shooting through their hero phase Holy Command. They've done a bunch of mortal wounds, they've killed a bunch of key heroes, or really destroyed one of your important units. So the trade-off is still going to be there to keep running your long strikes, your mega gargants, your fulminators, your storm drake guard, but at least there's going to be a small incentive for you should you kill them. And Sons of Behemat is another example, being a Sons player myself. When I play with them, I'm going to rack up a heap of early victory points, because it's going to be hard to take the objective off me. I'm monsters, so I'm going to score extra battle tactics. I'm going to really dominate the board. And in the ideal world, our rules would live and be in a breathing digital document, and I wouldn't need these paper-based attachments. We could update war scrolls on the fly as opposed to waiting for the next print book, but we don't live in Azir just yet. If I'm currently playing in an army that has priority targets, I don't think I would be dropping any of them just because I'm worried about giving away the bonus victory points. In fact, I'm probably going to be more aggressive with them. I'm going to take Battle Regiment and go 1 drop if I'm not already doing it. And I'm going to look to ways to maximize the efficiency and score more victory points with them than I have been in the past, because I know I'm going to give them away. So I need to make maximum damage and hopefully do enough that the return serve isn't nearly as hard as what I've dealt to you. If I'm playing with a Prime Hunters army, I think it's going to make my games a little bit closer than it has been in the past, but it's unlikely to turn my previous losses into victories. I don't think it's going to make Sylvaneth or Gloomspite Gitz the next overpowered faction just because they score a couple of extra victory points. It'll help, but again, I think the damage is being done by those primary targets between turn 1, turn 2, and maybe even turn 3, where some of these weaker factions just can't sustain the damage long enough. But I think it will make a bigger impact in the middles of the table. At the end of the day, I think it's too early to call out if this is going to have a large impact to the game or an insignificant impact to the game. And look, I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm not going to poo-poo it already and, claim that I know everything. Give it a shot, see how it goes, play with it for a month or two, and then form a proper opinion, because I think we're all making up assumptions right now. And, I have mentioned that I've included it into my 90-player grand tournament next month. So I'm going to get to see the impacts to see, does it change list construction or the faction's popularity? Am I going to see people dust off their Skaven and their Gloomspite Gitz again? Are going to people drop back a little bit, and instead of running all of the dragons, maybe they pull back and have a couple of units that aren't dragons so that they can kill the primary targets that aren't primary targets, right? So, my Storm Drake Guard are all primary targets. But if I had a unit of, I don't know, Judicators, for example, not long strikes, Judicators, then they potentially could be scoring me bonus victory points. So again, have a think about it, or maybe it won't have an impact at all. Maybe I'm just going to try to table you and I don't care how many victory points you score off me for bonuses, right? But let me know in the comment section what you're thinking about the primary targets and the prime hunters. Is it going to change your list construction? Is it going to change the way that you play the game? Maybe you're going to prioritize killing one of these prime targets. Well, you probably already were, right? Like if I see long strikes on the table, I'm probably going to try to kill those long strikes. But, is this going to create even more incentive for you to try to kill those units? Will you shelve some of your army? Are you now going to, drop back a little bit and stop running long strikes, and you're going to bring out your Judicators, or are you going to try to start looking for some other shooting options instead? Like, let me know in the comment section. I'll be curious to hear how you're looking at this. I'm personally, the list that I'm running, whether it's my Dragon Stormcast, my Sons of Behemat, whether it's my Gloomspite Gitz or my Cities of Sigmar, honestly, it hasn't changed a single thing with my list construction just yet. But if I notice that my games are going to becoming really tight, I might pull back on one of my priority targets to make sure I have some models on the table that aren't primary targets that could go out and kill the primary targets. So I've got some power projection that would allow me to score those victory points as opposed to having a whole army full of primary targets. I said a lot of primary targets. Anyway, let me know in the comment section. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked it. And let's see how this plays out in the game. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so link is down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.